Hey guys, I'm Jenna, also known as Ayala13. Today I'm going to show you how I painted up Doenrakkar from Judgement. Judgement is a 54mm MOBA style game which I haven't actually played yet, but I really love the look of the models. They have beautiful sculpts, unique themed bases, and decent quality resin. So I'm going to give it a go. And because it's such a large, complicated model, I've broken it up in 3 sub-assemblies to start. I started with a black base coat and painted the model with molten bronze. Next I gave it a thin wash with lilac oxide. But before it was dry, I took a paper towel and wiped off the raised surfaces. Then I gave it a very faint dry brush back with molten bronze. I painted the base, rock weapon, and rocks around his waist with a mix of dawnstone and black. This was then washed with nuln oil. The rocks were dry brushed with this base coat colour, followed by dawnstone by itself, and then with a mix of dawnstone and white. Finally, the rocks were stippled with Athonian camo shade and Doenrakkar green to represent lichen. The wooden weapon haft was base coated with Steel Legion drab, then washed with Agrax Earthshade. Finally, it was highlighted back with Steel Legion drab, mixing in Screaming Skull for the final highlight. The mane and lower legs were base coated with a mix of umbral umber and black. This was dry brushed with umbral umber. And finally, mixing in Doenrakkar brown. I also used this mixture to base coat the skin. I painted the metal with cold steel and then washed with a mix of nuln oil and Agrax Earthshade. Then highlighted this with cold steel. The wrappings around his waist, braids and weapon were painted with Doom brown and washed with Agrax Earthshade. I then painted the cloth and feathers in his mane Scorn Red, and then washed them with a mix of Agrax Earthshade and Carroburg Crimson. At this point I decided that his mane lacked depth, so I washed it with a mix of Agrax Earthshade and nuln oil. I painted stripes on the feathers with a mix of black and dawnstone. I washed this with nuln oil and highlighted it with dawnstone, mixing in white for the final highlight. I highlighted the red with Scorn Red, mixing in Kador red base for the highlight. Then I applied some dirt to the cloth by stippling the edges with Mournfang brown and then Rhinox hide. The leather wrappings were highlighted with Doombull brown, mixing in Cardic flesh for the final highlight. The necklace beads were painted with Meridius blue, and the bones and teeth were painted with a mix of Rakarth flesh and Screaming Skull. This was then washed with Agrax Earthshade and highlighted back with the Rakarth Flesh Screaming Skull mix. I added some more white to the mix for the final highlight, and finished off the beads with a highlight of arcane blue. I painted the eyes black, and then highlighted them with umbral umber and a white reflection dot. I painted the horns and hooves with a mix of Rakarth Flesh and Screaming Skull, adding black in for shading. I went over the skin with the original mix of Doenrakkar brown and umbral umber, but this time I added more Doenrakkar brown. I then highlighted this with just Doenrakkar brown, mixing in some rucksack tan for the final highlight. I tried to highlight with visible brush strokes to create a fur texture. I then glazed the snout and hands with umbral umber, mixing in black for future glazes. I glued the weapon on and splattered the model with blood for the blood god, painting a little on the head of the weapon too. I glued some mini nature grass tufts and Gale Force 9 static grass on the base, and then joined them together. And here's the finished model. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'll see you later.